There are moments in football where the move you don't make matters more than the one you do. Carolina stood at a crossroads this offseason. On one side, a generational pass rusher. On the other, a future mortgage beyond repair. And for once, they chose patience over panic. Let's rewind to the beginning of summer, a time when rumors moved faster than linebackers at the combine. The NFL world was spinning with whispers, and one name kept echoing through Panthers circles: TJ Watt. Carolina fans asked the question over and over again: should we go all in? Should we trade for the best edge rusher in the league? Should we pair the dominance with Brian Burns and unleash chaos on quarterbacks across the NFC South? It was tempting. Watt was still at the peak of his powers, the NFL sack leader over the last 5 seasons with a ridiculous 73.5 sacks. He's relentless, violent in motion, and as disruptive as they come. And then came the bombshell. 3 years, $130 million, $108 million guaranteed, an average of $41 million per season, making TJ Watt the highest paid non-quarterback in the league. Again, and just like that, the fantasy faded. Reality stepped in. Because here's the truth: Carolina didn't miss out. They escaped. This team is already strapped. The checkbooks are bruised. J.C. Horn got his payday. Chuba Hubbard got his bag. Trayvon Mullen's extension didn't come cheap either. The Panthers are walking a financial tightrope with only $18 million in cap space left. Adding Watt wouldn't just stretch the rope, it would snap it. And the price to acquire him? It would have been catastrophic. 3 draft picks, gone. A starting player, gone. And for what? One elite player who's likely nearing the back nine of his career. Let's be honest, what's not signing that extension without plans to retire at the end of it? The window would have been small. The risk? Massive. You don't just trade for TJ. What? You sacrifice for him. And Carolina isn't in a place to make that kind of sacrifice right now. This team is still rebuilding its foundation, still reshaping its future. And if they had pulled the trigger on this trade, they wouldn't just be buying a pass rusher. They'd be selling their future for a temporary boost that might not have even pushed them into playoff contention. And that's the cold, hard truth. So no, Panther Nation, this wasn't a missed opportunity. It was a bullet dodged, a financial grenade defused. And when the dust settles on this season, I believe we'll be thanking the front office for saying no when it mattered most. What is a beast? That's undeniable. But Carolina made the right move by not making one. In a video game, you can turn off the rules. In the real world, you have to live with the consequences. If the NFL was a video game, if we were still living in Madden 05 where the salary cap was just a toggle switch, yeah, sure. Trade everything. Stack stars. Go for broke. TJ Watt in a Panthers jersey would have been a no-brainer. But we're not playing a game. We're building a team. And this isn't fantasy football. This is the long, brutal chess match of the NFL. You can't just plug in elite talent and expect everything else to stay intact. There's a cost. And when TJ Watt signed his 3-year, $130 million extension with a staggering $108 million fully guaranteed, that cost became clear. Let that number settle in. 88% of his entire contract is already secured, locked in, non-negotiable. He could miss games, lose a step, or even call it quits, and he'd still walk away with nearly every dollar. That's not a deal. That's a mountain, and Carolina would have had to climb it blindfolded. It would have been reckless, especially for a franchise that's just beginning to see light after years of uneven footing. The temptation to buy into instant gratification, to chase a name instead of build a core, nearly derailed the plan. But for once, Carolina didn't blink. They didn't flinch. They stayed the course. This team made a rare, mature decision in a league that punishes patience. They didn't mortgage their future for a quick sugar rush. They held firm. They bet on development, on growth, on healing. Because what Carolina really needs isn't another superstar. What they need is redemption. And if we're being honest, last year's defense left scars, deep ones. Scars that can't be covered with a highlight signing. Scars that players like J.C. Horn and D.J. Wanham are still carrying into training camp. J.C. Horn spoke with the kind of honesty that hits you in the chest. He said, "You kind of want to throw it out of your mind because it's a new season, but it's also the motivation. We don't need to be anything close to that." It was a lot of injuries, a lot of chaos. But the stat book doesn't lie. We weren't good last year. That kind of truth doesn't come easy. It's born out of long nights watching film, of silent locker rooms, of walking off the field knowing you left too much undone. JC doesn't want pity. He wants payback. Not against a team, against last season itself. And DJ Wanham, now a rising voice in this defense, echoed the same energy. We know that wasn't the standard. He didn't need to say more. That one sentence says it all. Because it's not just about rankings. It's about identity. Carolina's defense lost its soul last year, and now, brick by brick, they're trying to build it back. Not by signing shiny names, but by looking inward. This season isn't about forgetting the past. It's about making sure it never happens again. And that starts with owning the pain, then turning it into purpose. You know what separates a team that bounces back from one that stays broken? How it handles the shame. Last year left bruises on this defense, not just physical ones, but the kind that dig deep into pride. You could see it in how they walked off the field, how they spoke in post-game interviews, and how they stared at stat sheets they didn't want to believe were real. But here's what matters now. They're not running from it. They're using it. Guys like J.C. Horn, Derek Brown, D.J. Wanham, they're built differently. They're competitors to the bone. And they've decided that last year's embarrassment isn't going to define them, it's going to fuel them. "We're going to show y'all," JC said. "We're going to show how much better we are, and how much better we can be." That's the kind of hunger that turns a locker room around. That's the kind of fire you don't teach. It comes from being doubted, from being disrespected, from hearing you're a bottom three defense and refusing to let that be your legacy. They're embracing the pain, owning the humiliation, not hiding from it, harnessing it. You don't forget that you gave up rushing yards by the thousands. You don't pretend that your secondary didn't get torn apart at times. You remember it. You hold on to it like a scar that reminds you what happens when you slip, and then you do everything in your power to make sure it never happens again. Because here's the truth. If you don't acknowledge the fire, you can't rebuild from the ashes. The work starts in Odas. In those quiet off-season practices where the stands are empty but the pressure is suffocating. In film rooms. In playbook corrections. In late-night texts between teammates who refuse to accept mediocrity anymore. And maybe, just maybe, that mindset is spreading. From the players, to the coaches, to a hero Ivero. You can almost feel the shift. Maybe Ivero looked in the mirror this offseason and said, "My system works, but where did I fall short? Where do I need to adjust, evolve, simplify, amplify?" That's growth. And when a defensive coordinator starts soul searching just as much as the players do, you're building something real. You're not just scheming, you're changing culture. And look, it's Friday, so let's breathe for a second. We've talked pain, we've talked pride. Let's talk possibility. Would you rather? Which Carolina Panther would you want to see win Offensive Rookie of the Year? Trevor Etienne, the electric backfield threat with bloodlines and burst. Tedairoa McMillan, the contested catch king with sure hands and sky-high upside. Jimmy Horn Jr., the route running specialist with something to prove. Or Mitchell Evans, the underdog tight end that no one's talking about. Yet, for me, I'm all in on Mitchell Evans. There's something poetic about a tight end silencing the noise. Our tight end room has been the subject of endless doubt. People say it's weak, say it lacks star power, say we've got no one to stretch the seams. And then here comes a rookie, overlooked, underrated, who grabs the spotlight and never lets it go. Imagine the narrative. A rookie tight end comes in, becomes Bryce Young's safety valve, opens up the offense, dominates the red zone, and takes home the award no one thought possible. Tight ends don't get that kind of love. But Evans? He could change that. And if he shines, this offense opens wide. Outside receivers get breathing room. The run game finds balance. And Bryce Young gets exactly what every young quarterback dreams of, a reliable outlet who always shows up when it matters. And that's not just a cool storyline. That's a foundation piece for the future. You ever sit back and wonder when the last time a tight end won Offensive Rookie of the Year? Yeah, same here. It's got to be decades ago. Maybe even all the way back to Mike Ditka in the 1960s. Tight ends just don't get that kind of spotlight anymore. They do the dirty work. They block, chip, and bleed for every catch, but rarely do they get the headline. That's why the idea of Mitchell Evans stealing the award feels so special. Not because it's expected, but because it's not. Because it would mean something is shifting. Because it would prove the doubters wrong, not just for one player, but for an entire offensive system that's being rebuilt from the inside out. But hey, don't just take my word for it. Let's hear from Panther Nation. Let's hear from the fans, the heart and soul of this team's journey. Joel 938 said something that stuck with me. They always bring up Bryce Young's height, but his game was never about that. It's about IQ, poise under pressure, precision. Give me Bryce for 4K all day. That's the kind of confidence we need. Because Bryce doesn't play tall, he plays smart. He's always had to. When you're smaller, the margin for error vanishes. And instead of folding under that pressure, Bryce built his entire style of play around anticipation, vision, and calm in the chaos. Then there's NZP Creations, who took it one step further. Let's go 12 minus 5. I'm full-blown Dulu, homie. I just got a feeling. Now that's bold. Not 9 wins. Not 10. Not 11, 12. And look, maybe it's optimistic. Maybe it's over the top. But if there's one thing Panther Nation doesn't lack, it's heart. Dream big. Go full Dulu. Why not? It starts with belief. And finally, we got a quiet drop in from Teddy C, who just said, no tight end trade, please. Love T. Simple. Clean. No debate. And honestly, I feel you, Teddy. Sometimes the best move is the one you don't make. Sometimes standing pat means standing strong. And that's kind of been the theme of this whole week, right? Standing strong, holding your ground, knowing who you are and who you don't want to be anymore. Whether it's passing on TJ Watt, rebuilding a bruised defense, or betting on unproven rookies, Carolina is drawing a line in the sand. They're not pretending the past didn't happen. They're just refusing to let it write the future. So wherever you're watching from, whether you're sipping coffee in Charlotte, grilling ribs in Rock Hill, or holding the line from across the globe, know this. The pain of last season isn't forgotten. It's fuel. And this team? They're hungry. They're growing. They're coming. Panther Nation, stay locked in. Stay loud. Stay proud. And whatever happens next, keep pounding.